Okay. Hello, everyone. We see you guys are starting to roll in. We're opening up just a minute or two early here, so feel free to chat us with some of what you guys see as some of the biggest challenges to your chapter meetings, and we'll see if we can incorporate that throughout our presentation as we go today. And if not, maybe John and Denisha will jot those ideas down for some future topics that might be helpful to the chapters. So. So as you guys are joining us and getting set up, if there's something really burning on your mind about chapter meeting challenges that you want to send us a quick chat message so we can noodle on that as we present today. We'd appreciate that. If not, we'll get started here in just a moment. Okay, let's see. Hello from Ecuador. Awesome. Thanks for joining us from all the way over there. So let's see, one of the items chatted in is drawing a more diverse group of participants. I'm glad you pointed that out. We will actually touch on that about halfway through our presentation on trying to get different demographics involved. So excellent. Okay. Denisha, I have 3 o'clock. Actually, I have 3:01. I don't see any other chat messages. Do you want to go ahead and we'll do some introductions and get going here?
Sure. I just want to start off by saying good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. As Katie mentioned, my name is Denisha Price, and I am one of the chapter activities coordinators with American Concrete Institute. I would like to welcome you to today's leadership webinar series, Enhancing Your Chapter Meetings. And today's speakers are Katie Emilio and Michael Morrison. Katie Emilio is a professional development program engineer at ACI. Previously, she was a senior engineer and supervisor for CTL Group. She has 10 years experience preparing and reviewing contract reports for standardized and specialized cementitious material testing programs, evaluating concrete materials for railroad specification compliance, evaluating curing compounds, sealers, grouts, precast stone, and various other concrete products. She received a BS in general engineering from the University of Illinois. She is also a professional engineer in Illinois. And Michael Morrison has nearly 30 years experience in project management related to construction materials testing and evaluation, field inspection, condition surveys, and development and execution of training programs within the concrete industry. He is highly skilled at teaching and training ACI certification courses and other concrete-related seminars and programs. He is an active member and past president of the Illinois chapter. He was the leader for the Illinois chapter ACI certification program from 2004 through 2010 and managed 5 programs with 575 plus certifications annually. Morrison is an active member of ASTM International and sits on numerous committees. Please join me in welcoming both of our speakers, and now they will begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Denisha.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us here. So before we dive into the presentation, just wanted to share a word of why Mike and I are talking to you here today. So as Denisha mentioned, my name is Katie. I am actually in the education, professional development and engineering side at ACI. I host our monthly webinars. And so I've had a lot of experience with this virtual world that we're all getting much more experienced with. So I'm bringing that component to our sharing today. And Mike Morrison is bringing a lot of sharing on meeting planning and meeting preparation, really from a chapter perspective, as he's been a regarded leader in the Illinois chapter for many, many years in the past. So with that said, Today, we're really going to try to focus on your meeting, your virtual monthly chapter meetings. This is one of the predominant ways that your chapter connects, shares information, does its networking, and interaction really pulls in future chapter members. So this is really critical and key to your chapter operations. And that's why we want to talk about that today. So our focus today, we're going to focus on presenters, setting up your calendar, some suggestions for you to consider, and having virtual meeting success. And then what we're calling tripping over my words, technology opportunities to help you with what you're doing. So before we get started, I would like to launch a poll here real quick. If you guys would kindly, you should be seeing on your screen, Mike, are you seeing a poll?
Okay. Yes.
So there's two questions. Question one is, has your chapter hosted a virtual meeting? Which I hope the answer is yes, but you'll see that there's some yeses, some maybe it didn't go so great, down to no. And then the second question, awesome, you guys are great. I see one, oh, come on, more than one person. Come on, guys. Give me some feedback here. How are you measuring success for your meetings? Are you basing it on the number of attendees? Is it just, that one person who attended and said, yes, this was the best meeting ever? Let us know. Give us some feedback here. What are you guys looking at? And I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds here. We're getting some more responses. This is good. Thank you. All right. So I'll give you guys a couple more seconds. I see the numbers changing. All right. I am going to end the poll and share those results out. Mike, are you guys seeing the results?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. So looks like about more than 50% of you have done it and are looking to improve or have had great success, which is wonderful. You can share ideas with the rest of us to circle around. And a couple of you haven't tried it, but you're getting ready. So this is a perfect opportunity to ask any questions. No question is a dumb question. We're here to help you guys. And success, I see heavily rated on the number of attendees and attendee feedback. So that's great, because that's what we are looking for when we're looking at our webinar reviews. And certainly engagement is important, although that's hard in a technical presentation necessarily to gauge. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing our results. And Mike, are you seeing my presentation slide?
We do. Okay,
awesome. With that, we're going to jump right into presenters. And Mike, if you want to start.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So some of you might have seen parts of this talk before. We've done it a number of times at the other chapter roundtable talks, but we think presenters are a very important part of the chapter's offerings. You're having your monthly meetings. We say monthly, maybe sometimes you only do them quarterly or you only do them 6 times a year, but this is the most critical thing that's going to, bring your members into your world, into your circle, and try and get them to see the benefits of being a member of your chapter and continue to come and actually participate. So how do you do this is the big thing here. Some chapters are very good and they have a committee. They'll have 3 or 4 people. They'll think this through. Then they maybe bring it to the board, to discuss it. Some chapters might just have one person that says, okay, I'll take care of this year. They might have a meeting or two to come up with a short list of topics and move forward with that. Some chapters schedule out, 6 months at a time. Some do a whole year. But I really think if you could form a committee, if you're not doing that right now, that's a really good way to do it. If you could get 3 people on it, it also sets up your succession, if you will. And it's a really good way to bring in new people, new members that aren't really doing anything. And you just say, hey, would you mind being on our meetings committee? It's easy. We just have a couple meetings. We brainstorm, come up with some short lists, and it's not, a terrible amount of work and a good entry point, if you will, get some new members into to participate with you. So if you're not doing that, you might want to consider that because it's a lot of work. I did it myself for the Illinois chapter for about 6 years. And it worked out better when we had a committee. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I just want to echo Mike there that I think a committee is great because it really just helps divide the load that it is to find and secure these speakers. And so speaking of finding them, we have some resources written here. Mike, do you want to lead us through that a little?
Sure. So you can ask your board members when you're at a board meeting to be aware of any national conventions they're going to or other events. If they see any good speakers, to bring that back to you. You can ask your membership while you're having a monthly meeting to ask them to share anything that they might see. You know, if your chapter has the wherewithal to bring in speakers from out of town, that's great. But there's a lot of resources out there at these industry events. Also consider doing a joint meeting. We always did a joint meeting. We did at least one with ICRI. Might be able to do something with ACI because that'll eliminate one meeting. A lot of your members might be members in both of those professional societies. We're going to talk about the ACI convention speakers in a minute here. And you can also reach out to the local universities in your area. There's many, you know, each city has a number of universities in the area. See if they're doing any research. Or maybe if your student chapter, see if any of your students would like to come and make a presentation. That's a really good resource too, if they're doing some kind of research that would be relevant, that you thought would be good for them to share with. Or this isn't on there either. If you have somebody that's that you've awarded a scholarship to, you can ask them to come back the next year and say, hey, can you come back and make a presentation to us on any research that you might be working on at the university? So I personally feel it's still a task. This is still a challenge to do to line up your speakers, if you will, for the year. I do think it's a little bit easier now because there are so many resources than there was like 20 years ago. Okay. So to me, I call this the Holy Grail. Back when I was doing it for the Illinois chapter, if I went to ACI convention, I always brought this back home with me. If I didn't go, there was always enough coworkers from PCA and CTL attending, and I would always, you know, hey, don't forget to bring that convention book back for me. I need that program book. If you go to the next slide, this lists all the speakers, all the hot topics, what the topic was, who the speakers were, a little summary about what they talked about. You can thumb through this. You might know some of them. Maybe somebody on your board might know them, but it's a great resource. And you know, if you know some people that attended, you can say, oh, how did this go? How did this, Katie Emilio gave this talk about cracking concrete. How was that? Was it a good talk? Was she a good speaker? How was her presentation? Was it just all word slides, or did she have videos and maybe some three-dimensional stuff happening or automation? So, you know, it's a good way to get some feedback on it.
One thing to add to the ACI program book, which is definitely an excellent reference, we did just chat out the link to where you can find the past ACI program books. They're PDF files on that webpage. A good thing here is even if there's, you know, one speaker whose presentation title caught your eye and you're like, oh yes, I want that. Usually, as many of you know from attending convention, there's multiple speakers on that topic. So great way to find, you know, if that person's busy, unavailable, whatever the case is, there's other resources in there.
And also further to that too, you might go through that and find somebody from your local concrete community that made a presentation at ACI convention that you never even had considered to ask about something. So you might find out some local folks are, you know, making presentations nationally, and they might be a good resource. Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for those of you who don't know, Michael Morrison, AKA George Clooney, is on the line with us today. So if you want him for your next chapter talk at your meeting, no, I'm just kidding. But as you'll see, he is wearing a bow tie in this picture there, if you look closely. The chapter talk program is a great way to get additional speakers and ideas if you haven't used it. If you have used it, I hope it's been successful with your chapters. I will chat the link out now. And Mike, did you want to add any other comments on that?
No, I was just going to say the chapter talks are great. I think there's somewhere around 6 technical talks. We have about 3 different certification talks we have that we could give. So if you set yourself up for a chapter talk and then you do a joint meeting with another local professional society, there you go. You've got 2 for the year already. Maybe you pick something up out of one of the convention guides. That's your 3rd talk. And then all of us have, you know, big local projects going on. Those are always usually a pretty good resource. So, that's one of the things we just wanted to touch on today, is try to give you other resources, other considerations for getting these speakers to your area. So let's talk about another resource for you. What's my neighbor up to? I used to surf the other chapters' websites and see what they did. Some chapters have a lot of information on their websites, some not so much. Some put all kinds of information about the speakers, past and future, which is really great. But that's an easy way to look around and see what's going on nearby. You might be able to get a speaker from another city that could drive up. Maybe they don't have to fly across country. And then you can kind of just browse through their topics. I know at one time in Illinois, we had somebody come up and speak about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when they were doing repair and expansion there. We had somebody come down and speak to us about the Milwaukee Art Museum that was built. Some of you might have gone and checked that building out when convention was in Milwaukee about 5 years ago. Very interesting project and presentation. I think we also had somebody come and talk to us about a new bridge on the Mississippi River years ago from Missouri. So it's another fairly easy way to find something locally. And then the thing is it also gives you an opportunity to call up your other chapter, call over to the Iowa chapter or to the Indiana chapter and say, hey, we're interested in this person that you had talk about this. How did it go? What kind of attendance did you get? What kind of feedback was it? They might tell you, it went great, or, oh, it wasn't that good at all. So that's all good information to share, but it's yet another resource. And if you've got more time, and you've got the funding to support it, surf all over the country. Like I said, some chapters, the Greater Michigan chapter's website, I was pretty impressed with that. They list all their past speakers. They have the bio about the speaker, what the topic was, a lot of information there that you could just browse through, and then you could follow up with that speaker and contact them yourself. Anything else, Katie? Okay. One thing you want to try and do, you absolutely have to do, is avoid conflicts. We always made sure that we didn't want to be the same week as the ICRI meeting. We wanted to make sure our speaker, you could have two different speakers, but they could be speaking to a similar topic that could impact your attendance. So I know a lot of you have set days of the month that you have your meeting, and set time of the day, be it a breakfast meeting or a luncheon or a dinner. But yeah, that's a big important thing, is to avoid conflicts. And then Katie, did you want to say anything about the meeting invite?
Yes. So really critical there, once you have confirmed with them, whether it's via email or phone or a video chat, however you're contacting your speaker, make sure you do send a confirmation. Personally, I love it when people send me a calendar invite, because then I don't have to remember, oh yeah, I was going to do this thing and I didn't put it on my calendar and then something else happened. So I find it really useful to receive calendar invites. So I send them out to people as well, because I want to make sure that I'm giving them that courtesy of getting it on their calendar. And that way it's also nice when you get that response, right? And they say accept, like they're kind of locked in. It gives you a little warm, fuzzy feeling. Further on that confirmation point, Mike shared some documents here that you can see from the Illinois chapter on what they did as far as confirmation. Mike, do you want to talk to that a bit more?
Yeah, these are kind of dated, but we actually had a little bit of an issue happen one time with an out-of-town speaker, and everybody thought everybody was on the same page and clear, and we weren't. So we actually had a letter that we would send, especially to somebody who was coming in from out of town, that said what we would cover, if we could pick them up at the airport, and we also had this information in there with regards to what kind of AV we had, and that we wanted them there ahead of time to do a check, et cetera, et cetera. It worked out quite well. Everybody knew up front what was covered, and that helped avoid confrontation. Also, we had one for local speakers. I think they're good to do anyways. Like Katie was saying, you can send an email too, but just, follow up to our conversation. You're scheduled to make this presentation. We'd like it to be about 45 minutes long. We'll leave 15 minutes for questions. Here's the AV we have. If you have any other special needs, here's where the location is. It's all done in one letter. And, glad to share these with anybody. They're just Word documents, but once it's made, it's easy. You're just cannibalizing every time. But it does kind of, establish,
and I
the
actually
expectation.
just yesterday received an email confirmation for a presentation I'm doing in March for one of our Manitoba chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked and impressed at their email to me. It broke out very specifically. Your presentation can be in PowerPoint or a similar software. It told me they're using Zoom webinar. It said, do you want to do polls? Do you want to do other interaction? It broke out all of those things that a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. And it was so clearly laid out. It was so refreshing. I was shocked. I was like, this is awesome. So whether you write a physical letter or do an email or whatnot, having that confirmation helps the speaker as well, because they can plan and think about things maybe they weren't aware of relative to your chapter, relative to your geographic location, if that makes a difference on their talk, whatever it may be. So definitely having that communication is great, and specifically into the calendar. And one of the things we're going to talk about here is how setting up your calendar in advance can be really helpful. So we do have a question for you, and I am going to shoot this into a poll. Just give me a minute. I haven't used this that much. All right, here we go. So our poll question for you. So this is where we want you to wake up your hand and make sure you're paying attention. If you guys can let us know by using the poll, how many meetings does your chapter host a year? Is it 4? Do you do 6? Are you seasonal? Do you do one every month? I also put on a vary option. I see some of you are 20 some, 30% of you using that. I'm going to give you guys a couple more seconds to respond, and then we'll share that back, see what everybody's doing. Okay. Share results. Mike, are you guys seeing the results?
We are.
Okay. So it looks like about a quarter of you are doing it quarterly, 50% about 8 times a year, and 20% either in the vary schedule, 7% year round. So nobody's doing 6 a year. All right, let's take that down. Mike, is my screen showing again correctly?
Yep, the slide's up.
All right. Do you want to talk more to that slide, or should we move on?
No, we can go to the next one. It all kind of ties together anyways. So, earlier we were talking about having a committee, if you could, for scheduling all your meetings. Another thing you really want to try and do is, if you can schedule your meeting for the whole year out, that would be great. I know it can be difficult. We used to do them in half a year at a time. But the last thing you really want to do is be going month to month. I mean, I've been to some places to speak, and I looked at their website, and 2 weeks before I'm going to speak, and it says to be announced. And they asked me to speak a month before that. And then they didn't have the next month's speaker lined up yet either. So that really is difficult. You really aren't going to draw people if you do that. But if you can line up like your seasonal schedule, that works out. And I know some people do go year round. I know in Chicago, we always, we didn't do anything June, July, and August. But if you can have your schedule published, available, maybe put it out at your meetings, when you're back to having real meetings, or if now you're doing Zoom meetings, then send out an email with it. What I have up here on the slide is the Minnesota Concrete Council's 2018 program schedule. And so I used to, I'm from Chicago, but I live up in the greater Minneapolis area now. My wife works in the industry, and she works for an engineering firm up there. And so we both got involved with the Minnesota Concrete Council about 8 years ago. And they're also now the ACI Minnesota chapter. Very well run. And I was just really impressed with this on my plate when I went to a meeting one time. And what I really like about it is, okay, this is out at the first meeting in January. This is on my plate. I can look this over and see, oh, wow, John Kahn is speaking on May 17th. Ken Hover is speaking here November 8th. I can go put that on my calendar now, and maybe I'm going to work around it. I don't want to make sure I'm not out of town that week, or try to not make any other commitments, because I really like to hear these speakers. I've heard good things about them, versus getting an email 3 weeks ahead of time and saying, oh, our speaker this month is this, and our speaker this month is this. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. And now I can't make it because I've got other commitments. So this is a great thing to do. Obviously, you could post it on your website, but if you have this all done, you could, hand it out on a regular basis. Plus, they're marketing the fact that, you can get your PDHs and CEUs depending on the topic. And then they also set up and do monthly forums, which I've seen at some other chapters, and we'll talk about that a couple slides up. But Katie, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope. Let's, sorry, clicking on too many buttons. Let's keep going. So today we kind of want to put the question to you, like, what kind of attendance does your chapter meetings generate? What do you guys find reasonable? Is 20 attendees good? Is 80 good? I think Mike said the Minnesota chapter has had many, what did you say is their average? 80, 100?
80 to 100 people, yeah. And some chapters, you're in a major metropolitan area and you get 35 or 40 people. I know sometimes in Chicago, we always had somebody from the local government agency come in January, and that meeting would always be 100 plus. So it does depend on the speaker, but yeah.
One thing we wanted to
challenge.
Just you guys in this is that maybe shaking things up might help you, right? Certainly you're in this virtual world, which makes everything different. But one thing Mike suggested is maybe trying a morning meeting if you'd been doing lunch or dinner. Being flexible, seeing what works with your members, what works better for their schedules, just to try to help build that momentum and get greater attendance.
Another thing too to that, since we're doing a lot of virtual meetings now, maybe do the meeting twice if your speaker is willing to. Let's say you generally do it in the evening, and now nobody really wants to do an evening meeting, so you're doing it late in the afternoon at 4 o'clock, and you thought you'd get 100 people and you only had 22. Maybe offer it again 2 weeks later and offer it at 7:30 a.m. If you're willing to do it and if your speaker's willing to do it.
I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead.
We did talk through this before, but we were kind of trying to keep this friendly. So one thing we wanted to share with you guys is some ideas to target maybe young professionals, but maybe other demographics. And it's interesting, one of the, I forget if it was chat or a question, one of the attendees on this meeting messaged in saying one of our challenges is having a diverse group of participants. And that is hard. So some things we wanted to throw at you as ideas are, and some of this may apply more to the in-person world versus the virtual world, but see what you can work with in this virtual land while you've got it. Trying to do a mixer, trying to do a luncheon, trying to highlight some community service projects. Mike can talk more to that, but before I let him do, I do want to say, or like maybe some sort of virtual bring a friend, right? Maybe you have a coworker who doesn't do any ACI stuff or doesn't do any professional society stuff. Say, hey, come with me to this, check it out, and maybe there's a virtual reward for that. Access to a course or access to something else that you can offer to them as encouragement to liven that up. Mike, do you want to talk about the community service or other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, this is all obviously things to do, these were mostly pre-COVID. It's a little bit harder to do this stuff on Zoom, but yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do to try and, develop different groups of people to get involved. I attended the Southern California chapter did a big mixer for young professionals. And it was the first time they were going to do it. It was the California chapter president led it, or vice president, I think it was at that time. And, he's an older guy like me. And so he was the one that led the whole thing. And it was a great success. They had over 85 young professionals attend. And a lot of them were first-time attendees. And they did another one 2 months later. That was great. We did a lot of community services projects in Illinois chapter for a number of years. We did at least one a year, sometimes two. The chapter funded it, and that was a great way to get younger people involved too, or just get people involved that didn't really want to do anything else. They didn't want to participate in the golf outing or, help you set up meetings or whatever else, or work with your certification program, but they were interested in community service. That was, there's a big benefit to that. It pays, there's a big payoff and a good way to build friendships. Okay, let's go to the backup plan. So we have all this bad weather going on right now in the United States. So, I mean, imagine if you had a speaker set up that was supposed to fly out from Philadelphia and his or her flight got canceled. So we always had a backup plan. We were lucky, I'm sure you all are too. Identify somebody that's willing to be a relief valve for you. They have a talk or a couple talks that they have done. They're available. If they're a past board member, they'll be a little bit more sympathetic to your situation. So find out who your Superman and Superwoman are and have them lined up, because you just never know when you would need that.
And even though that we are saying this to the in-person, it also does apply virtually. You don't know if your future presenter slips and falls, is having surgery, has another sickness or illness that they're dealing with. So it is a good idea to have backups, whether we're in virtual world or not. Another thing that we'd like to talk about is with planning out your calendar. While we're saying, get it lined up, you don't want to fill it with garbage or reuse a lot of stuff where your attendees are like, I already heard this from them,
Yeah, you can survive one bad maybe speaker / presentation, but if you have 2, 3, 4 in a row, it'll impact your attendance, and folks might just start talking about going, I'm not going to that chapter meeting anymore. It's just they don't even have good speakers. I'm just going to go to the Structural Engineers Association or the ICRI or whatever. Because remember, we're all competing. A lot of your members are members in a number of professional societies. So you want to make them want to participate and come and be part of the ACI.
Okay. And before we dive into this next part, I do want to recognize that it is 3:30, and I know we set this for about 30 minutes. So Mike and I have some history working together, so we might be adding a little more chit chat than you're expecting. So if you do have to drop off, that is totally fine. If you can stay on, please do. We do have more to share, and I am watching the questions. We'll try to get to those toward the end. Appreciate the chat ins and everything. So your virtual success really hinges upon 2 things. Number 1, preparation. And number 2, having a good speaker, right? Many of you may recognize some of the faces on this slide. Some of you may not. All of them are past ACI presidents. They are all fabulous speakers in different ways. Some of them are very soft-spoken. Some of them may throw candy at you if they are with you in person. So you don't know what you're going to get. Well, maybe you do because you may have seen or heard about it. But they all have quality content and quality information to share with you. And so your role as the chapter leadership putting this event on is to set them up to succeed. And so some of what we mean by that is the communication. Making sure that they know just a lot of the stuff that we talked about before, the length of the presentation. Talk about what audio visual system you're using. Everybody's using something different. And honestly, it doesn't matter what you use as long as you understand it and your speaker is comfortable, right? If you guys can hear us and see our information, that's it. That's all that matters. Everything else is fluff. It's fun. Some of it's fun. I have to say there was an interaction we wanted to do with you today that I didn't know wasn't going to work till I practiced. But it's just getting that information across. Mike, do you want to talk about the bio thing?
Yeah, that's a good thing to do. And actually, I should have talked to Denisha about my bio before today started.
I felt that way too when she was reading
practice
it.
what you preach, right? I can't believe I didn't do that, but not your fault at all, Denisha. I should have got with you on that. But yeah, sometimes you'll get a bio and it's quite long, and you don't want to stand up in front of your whole membership or be online and read the whole thing. So you might want to run it by them, especially if they're very accomplished speaker, and say, hey, I was going to just kind of pick out these 4 sentences. Are you okay with that? Some may want you to read almost the whole thing. So it's just a good thing to do. Yeah, time for questions, expected arrival time. This is kind of some of the information you can put in the letter as well. But you definitely need them to get there before it starts and do a system check. You don't want to be doing that in front of the whole group or in front of the whole, the screen, and you got 112 people waiting for you to get started.
Yeah, so to highlight that system check, and one of you, I think it was Dave, chatted in that they do a practice about a couple of days beforehand, and that is heavily, heavily encouraged because you want to practice with your speaker and make sure they know, number 1, how to get into your system. Make sure their computer, Mac, PC, whatever they're using is playing nice in the system. Most importantly, make sure they know how to adjust their audio. You will see that both Mike and I are wearing these really lovely headsets that look like we're airplane pilots or air traffic control, but the importance is that the speaker is close to my mouth. You're not getting a lot of background noise from my room. It just really goes miles to having that quality sound. So even if I'm wearing mufflers, you know, you guys can handle that for the better audio quality, right? Another important thing I like to talk about practicing with speakers is if their slides have a lot of animations or videos or things that really are hard to load, you want to make sure you practice it, because it may be different when there's only 3 of you on the line in practice mode than when you have 100 people come in, and talk about, okay, if this doesn't play, do you have a screenshot or two that maybe you want to show instead, or have it as a backup if that's really relevant content. So just things to talk about. And I think as we're all using this virtual world, we're understanding that better. Another feature is, you know, if they're a speaker that presents using a pointer, make sure you practice that. Make sure they know what they can change it to look like, a spotlight, an arrow, whatever. Or if they don't want to use it, if they understand where it lands so that it's not on the screen during their presentation. Again, interaction tools, whatever your software has, like we did the polling today. I wanted to do annotate, which is where you kind of put little pictures on. We couldn't operate that. So practice, let them know what's useful. Some of that may not apply to technical presentation, right? But where it may apply is maybe if you're, and we're going to talk about this a bit later, but maybe if you're opening earlier to do some networking or interaction, those tools might be useful there with your members. So certainly do a walkthrough. Now we're talking about technology opportunities. And the reason I have this gentleman on the screen, and anybody who attended the presentation I did last year on you know, virtual meetings may have seen this before, is this is your speaker and he looks really shocked. You don't want your speaker to be like that, right? So plan for the unexpected. And I know that's so hard because we don't know what's going to happen. Your Wi-Fi might go kaplooey. Your speaker's Wi-Fi might go kaplooey. I'll share a quick story. Last year, we were doing a President Series ACI webinar, and one of our own staff accidentally, when they went to exit, like shut it down for everybody. That's the worst that can happen, and we survived. Within less than a couple of minutes, everybody was clicked back in. We all know what to do. We know how to, you know, push the buttons, and we were up and running. Now, did I feel like crazy? Yeah, my heart was racing a little bit during that, but you know, if you talk through these things and you know what to do, it'll just get you to the end goal faster, which is getting back up live and running. So have backups. We don't have it specifically on the slide, but when I do prepare for webinars, I like to have multiple people on with me from staff. So you guys, as the chapter leadership putting it on, should have multiple people on to support you, because you're all learning, and it's sometimes nice to have one person focusing on the question and chat box while you're running and moderating what's going on live, or communicating with your speaker to make sure they're set. So it's good to have contingency plans and think about that. And the worst that can happen, if it happens, you guys click back in and you move forward. Also with technology, and this ties back into the confirmation that we talked about earlier, when you are confirming and promoting stuff and sharing this information out to your membership, make sure you include the title. Make sure you include a picture if you have something, because that catches people's eyes more than just a bunch of words. And most importantly, Mike told me I needed to underline this, so I bolded it too. Make sure you include a link to register, because that'll help everybody get where you want them to be. So make sure your communication is clear.
And you want to make it easy.
Yes. Mike, do you want to talk to the opportunities that forum?
Yeah, another thing you might consider, again, now this could work, you know, moving forward when you have live meetings and also online, is I would call them chapter forums. And you'd have to maybe talk about this at your board level and see if you want to pursue something like this. But this would not be, you know, something that the attendees would pay for. Usually sponsored by maybe a manufacturer, or maybe it's an engineering firm, or whatever it might be. It's somebody that's in your membership base, and they want to present a new product that's coming out, or a new capability, or some new technology. And it might be a brown, you know, a box lunch, or it could be a late afternoon, you know, just some soft drinks and the presentation. And I've attended a couple of them, and you know, sometimes there's a fair amount of people there. Sometimes it's packed, and it's just an interesting. Another thing that you could do that people could view as a membership, benefit of membership. Also, if I'm a member, a benefit of membership two ways. being a member and getting new information about stuff in the industry, and also being a member and being able to share some of my company's information. So they're not necessarily a marketing presentation at all. It's usually very specific to a capability or a product. Something to think about. And I've attended a couple of them in different chapters, and I thought it was good. Personally, I thought it was a great idea. That's all I have on that, unless.
No, I don't have anything further on that. So another thought that we had to share, working on attendance, because that's what you guys are looking for, is maybe sharing a slideshow, either before or after your meeting, that maybe highlights some of the efforts that the chapter has done, whether that's community service, a Toys for Tots program. Another thing we thought with this virtual thing is, and somebody asked, a question was typed in about how do you combat virtual meeting fatigue? And that's hard. We're all in it, right? We're all, when we're communicating with our screens. So maybe think about using an icebreaker, you know, to liven it up a little bit, get people interacting before you start your main presentation, to give that a little piece of that networking connection that we're missing from that in-person space. Okay. So with that, today, our intention was to help give you ideas and suggestions on where to look for your presenters, lining up your calendar to help you get that momentum and build that attendance, some ideas for virtual meeting success, which really, in one word from me, is practice. That's what's going to get you there. And the technology opportunities, I mean, it's fun to play and poke around in new systems, right? So look at it in a positive manner. Don't look at it as a challenge. Look at it as an opportunity that you can do moving forward. Mike, do you want to add anything, or should I move?
No, you're good.
Okay. So with that, I do want to share with you guys, we have some resources I'm going to chat out. We've got a handout of today, a PDF. Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, everybody has resources on meeting online practices. So I've thrown a few of those in there. And then Mike and I also thought it would be helpful to include a resource from ACI that Ken Hover, a past ACI president, wrote. It's a Concrete International article on meeting planning. And it should be really useful for both virtual and in person. I'm going to chat a link out where you can find that and download that for your reading pleasure. And with that.
And just real quick to that, it's an interesting article because Ken wrote it from both sides of the coin, I should say, as somebody who was a chapter president and active in the chapter, and also as somebody who goes around the country giving presentations. So I enjoyed his article, and so we always share it with everybody.
Okay. I would like to thank everybody for your attention and your interaction. And Denisha, did you want us to go into questions?
Yes, so it looks like, thanks Katie and Mike for that great presentation. It looks like we do have a question in the question box. It states, for virtual speakers, what are some appropriate thank you gift ideas? What is the expectation of a speaker who is giving up their time for the chapter?
So I think that's hard, but maybe easy. I haven't seen any virtual speaker gifts. I wonder if some, like a relaxation app or something calming, meditative, perhaps something like that, they might find useful. I know it's not related to concrete, it's not related to your chapter, but just trying to think virtually, what do you give them, right? You're not going to physically give them something. I don't know, Mike, do you have any other ideas on that? Or maybe, I don't know if your membership, well, I don't know if they would want to be I don't know, some kind of membership to something.
Yeah, I mean, I think every chapter is different on that. I mean, I know we gave out different things every year or every other year. I don't have a instant come to mind answer for that, actually. Oh, Dave Sikorsky, they're giving out a nice Yeti coffee mug with the chapter logo. Yeah, I've gotten a number of those as well. Yeah, that seems to be a pretty popular one right now.
That's a good idea, Dave.
The next question is, has there been much experience with or movement to a hybrid meeting, like live stream and in person?
I have not seen or been aware of any of that, but Mike, did you mention that? Is that what Minnesota was looking into with that Boy Scout space, or is that not?
I don't know a lot about that at this point. Yeah, I think actually John was telling us about that, but.
Yeah, so we don't have any direct experience to share. I think it's an interesting idea, especially as things do start to open up. How do you have a meeting where you have maybe 10 people in person and 30 people online? Don't have answers, but it certainly is intriguing and something to look into. I think a lot of that would depend on how do you have technology for both the in-person people and the online people to have interaction as appropriate, you know, questions and answers, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it might be something we should actually look into trying to do a demo of, like a demonstration of that. We could do something like that at the Resource Center.
That would be kind of cool.
Sorry, we're chatting.
We're all learning together.
Yeah.
And that looks like it's the last question, but I'll give everyone a few seconds just in case we have any more additional questions that come in. I do want to remind everyone that we will have another webinar this Friday at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern on young professional activities, and our speaker will be Connect Worlds. Cool. She'll lead that discussion. If you're interested, please register for that. And it looks like we don't have any more questions. So again, I just want to thank you, Katie and Michael, for that presentation. This will conclude today's webinar. We hope that everyone enjoyed it and learned some valuable tools that you can apply to your chapter. Have a great day, evening, or night, depending on where you're at, and continue to stay safe.
Thanks, Tanisha.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.